Welcome to the Kind Futurist. We are your hosts, Helen Mekonen
and Urmilla Khan. We'll feature inspirational leaders and everyday heroes as we open the dialogue on what being wealthy really means for generations to come.
Welcome back to the Kind Futurist. In this episode, we are going to bring all of the elements back of ESG, environmental, social, and governance, back together. But wanted to start with a topic about leadership specifically. So if you're not a vice president of sustainability or in a writer in a communications role where you're writing an ESG report, how can you be an ESG leader without that title? Well, first of all, you don't want to jump into any type of ESG topic or conversation without really understanding the impact, your contribution to the organization. Because you really want to, again, go back to that authenticity conversation that we were having earlier. You want to be authentic. You want to know that what you're saying, what you're doing, and what your actions are really will have an impact to yourself, to your team, and your organization. And secondly, understanding your customer, understanding your team, and understanding your organization will help to set the stage to how you continue to lead a conversation around ESG within your team and within your organization. What are your motivations? What drives you? And then asking the same questions about your team and about your organization. What are your hiring practices like? Mm-hmm. Do we want to install a green roof on top of our building? And if not, why not? It's really asking some of those questions that are going to be really important for you to be that ESG leader without that title.
Mm-hmm. Why not? And what now?
Yes. What now?
In referencing an article that we were looking at in Harvard Business Review on corporate social responsibility, the title is actually quite striking. An ESG reckoning is coming. An ESG reckoning is coming in whatever way it impacts you, because it will. And each of us can be an advocate, right? That's what we're talking about here. How do we collectively and individually advocate for these important pieces that affect us all? Here are a few things that we were looking at. So firstly, all companies probably should be required to publicly report on their social and environmental impact. The reports that are being published right now, are they self-serving?
Some are, and I think it goes back to trusting yourself, trusting your organization, and trusting that admitting to what you don't know or your shortfalls will actually help you propel yourself forward.
Mm-hmm. Metrics that we can look at, depending on the sector, of course, are things like carbon emissions. What are your investments in training programs? What proportion of workers are really earning a living wage as inflation just skyrocketed, perhaps throughout the world? Many organizations can really decide what social and environmental data to report on, but it has to be a conscious decision.
Yeah, and it should be standardized to a certain degree. What elements of environmental are important to report on? Mm-hmm. Is it going to be all? And if it is all, then it has to be, I strongly believe that it's all or nothing in this case. Mm-hmm. But there are different organizations and industries that may think differently. But in order to move forward, we all need to be open and transparent because we really only have one planet, one Earth, and so all the things that we do on a regular basis, on a day-to-day basis, will continue to affect it positively or negatively.
So true. When we look at diversity, equity, and inclusion, which it surrounds us, it's a part of us every day. There are numerous organizations that are taking the time, the depth to understand what diversity means to them and to their workforce, and will create a policy. And that's fantastic. So that diversity policy is published. What about thinking about publishing? What is the makeup of your workforce today? And as a result of that diversity policy, has there been any shift, right, in the actual makeup? That's sort of the self-serving. Those pieces can be self-serving, or how much are we tying it to, to the results? Well, you'll report on your workforce, but what about the pay disparity between groups? I recall Helen, I think it was during Women's International Day, where many organizations, as we all do, we celebrate women. They're part of we're women. But, we highlight disparities and so on Women's Day and every day. And organizations are eager to state that, this is something that we're on board with. There was an article that I read about an individual, I believe he was in the UK, and he said, he tweeted out, for all of you organizations that are publishing Happy International Women's Day, I am going to put a direct link to the disparity within your organizations. Now, it was a joke, but it really was his way of saying, hey, are we really walking the walk that we're talking, right? What is the gender inequity right now in your organization? Yeah. Think about it. What are you going to do about it? What now?
Yeah, accountability. It's huge, right? You need to be held accountable for, not only what you say, but also what you do, which, actions speak much louder than words. And we continue to encourage organizations to not be performative, to really think about the long game when it comes to making a difference and making a change. But within that long game, you need to have those small steps in order to get there.
There's this phrase. It says, "Do well by doing good." Right? Do well by doing good. Whether well for you is tied to profit or to health, do good. And it all ties in. Center on things like supporting workers, responding to racial injustice, fighting climate change, as we've been talking through the other episodes. It really is in our power to advocate and to hold organizations and ourselves accountable for that, not as a negative, but as a positive for us all in a very, collegial way, passionately, but bold.
Yeah, and it has to be meaningful. And then, the last part, and it's something that we were talking about even earlier, is about how do these actions then kind of continue to have that feedback loop, and then continue to give and to give and to give. And so this has to deal with policy, but also balance that interesting and delicate balance between policy, actions, protest. I feel like it's those three elements that kind of work hand in hand, because you have to have the protest in order to voice opinion that may drive change in policy. And then what are some of those actions beyond the words that you're penning on that policy document?
Sustainability, right? And inclusivity, all being socially responsible. I think an ongoing theme that we're hearing here is balancing profit with that stated public benefit, improving customers' health, creating good jobs, restoring ecosystems.
Yeah, those are all elements that are going to help us really propel forward. We can't undo what has been done, but we can certainly make changes to the future.
Change management. You bring up a good point. Change management. Yes, it's possible, right? It's just a certain amount of dedication, as well as advocacy, but also adaptation. And how do we focus on that? Because if organizations don't, if you and I don't, organizations will find that they're at odds with their customers, with their employees, with investors, and also regulating boards.
Yes, the regulators. You have to make good choices ultimately, right choices that are going to help you, help the leadership, help the organization move forward, and then being able to really have strong, positive impacts for the issue that is at hand today, but then for what's in the future as well.
And more shareholders are really focused on how organizations are doing, right, with respect to these core factors: environmental, social, and governance. So would you like to have more investment in your organization, into our economy, into life? Let's do well by doing good. So to summarize, I think some of the pieces that we talked about here as actionable in terms of 3 accountability mechanisms, we were looking at companies being required to publicly report on their social and environmental impact with clear, standardized, and easy to understand metrics. We also looked at the role that we all have to play, consumers, employees, investors, in holding companies accountable. And also those organizations or companies that are serious about becoming more sustainable, inclusive, perhaps they should consider, looking at becoming corporations that clearly provide those benefits.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, that is it for today as well. Thank you for tuning in today to the Kind Futurist, and join us next time when we will bring you more conversations to shape our world.